Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of the Brewery, I will be discussing a new legendary creature from Throne of Eldraine, Emry, Lurker of the Loch. Emry is a 1/2 merfolk wizard for 2 generic and 1 blue. However, you can reduce her cost by 1 for each artifact you control, pretty much working like affinity. This means that it's very possible to consistently cast Emry on turn 1 or even turn 0 if you start the game with a god hand. However, although possible to cast Emry on turn 0, actually winning on turn 0 isn't possible, at least not as the recording of this video. Yet it's still possible to win on turn 1. Given that that's the title of this video, I'm going to explain that combo later on in greater detail. Emry's third ability allows you to cast an artifact from your graveyard by simply tapping Emry. This is the ability for which the entire engine of the deck is focused on, casting artifacts from the graveyard to potentially storm out and kill off the table. However, this engine also allows for other crazy interactions that will also win you the game. Fair warning that this deck tech will discuss plenty of infinite combos for Emry that are also synergistic with each other. Alright, so where do we begin? Well, we want Emry out as quickly as possible to try and get the engine going. Fortunately, her first ability allows for just that. Notwithstanding, this cost reduction also applies to her commander tax. So, as long as we have artifacts in play, we can potentially cast her from the command zone for just a single blue mana each time. This is why the deck runs 34 artifacts. Naturally, the best zero-costed artifacts for this are the Mana Rocks, Chrome Mox, Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, Mox Amber, Mox Diamond, and Mox Opal. Chrome Mox might seem like an odd choice since you'll find that the deck doesn't have enough blue cards in order to take advantage of its imprint ability. However, that's not that important. We can always sacrifice it later on when we do have a blue card in our hand and then recur it in order to get it imprinted with said blue card. Lotus Petal is an integral part of one of the infinite mana combos. Lion's Eye Diamond can also be used for infinite mana instead of Lotus Petal, but you'd have to discard your hand each time. This isn't necessarily a problem since Emry can recast any artifacts discarded this way. Other zero-costed artifacts that can be used as pieces of an infinite recurring engine are Mishra's Bauble and Urza's Bauble. The brothers' baubles can be sacrificed for free and cast for free. This might not provide infinite mana like Lotus Petal and Lion's Eye Diamond, but it can provide infinite storm just like they do. What they have over the Mana Rocks is that you could potentially generate infinite delay triggers for drawing cards during your next upkeep. Other zero-costed artifacts are also creatures. Hangerback Walker, Memnite, Ornithopter, Phyrexian Marauder, Phyrexian Walker, Shield Sphere, Shifting Wall, Stone Coil Serpent, and Walking Ballista. Hangerback Walker, Phyrexian Marauder, Shifting Wall, Stone Coil Serpent, and Walking Ballista are perhaps the best ones for integrating into infinite recursion engines. The reason for this is that if you cast them for X equals 0, they enter the battlefield with 0+1/+1 counters and thus have to be sacrificed as a state-based action. This means that you can also use these creatures similarly, the zero-costed artifacts with a free self-sacrifice outlet. Not only that, but having the creature type means that they can also trigger cards that care about casting creatures entering the battlefield, or creatures dying. Alright, so how do we use these pieces? So far, the only ones that can self-sacrifice and generate mana are Lotus Petal and Lion's Eye Diamond. The rest need a separate sacrifice outlet in order to be recast from the graveyard for a net gain in mana. Fortunately, the deck runs such sacrifice outlets, Quark Clan Ironworks. Also, remember how I just mentioned the advantage of zero-costed artifact creatures? Well, not only can you sacrifice them to Quark Clan Ironworks, but to Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar as well, something you can't do with the Mana Rocks or other artifacts. Additionally, sacrificing and recasting these artifact creatures trigger cards like Blasting Station, Thornbite Staff, and Intruder Alarm, the last two which untap Emry. And all of these cards you're casting from the graveyard thanks to Emry, regardless if they're creatures or not, will trigger Aetherflux Reservoir, Vedalken Archmage, Mirrodin Besieged, and Secrets of the Dead. Okay, so now that we've seen a couple of the pieces to the various infinite recursion engines, let's dissect these combos. The simplest combo is a way to untap Emry and a zero-costed artifact that sacrifices itself. You can use either Chakram Retriever or Mirren Spy to untap Emry every time you cast an artifact. The zero-costed self-sacrificing artifact can be either of the Brothers' Baubles, either Sacrificial Mana Rock, or any of the X-costed artifact creatures. Any combination of these cards can generate Infinite Storm, Infinite Gravestorm, and Infinite Triggers for things that care about artifacts being cast, etc. This is how it works. With Emry, an untapper, and a zero-costed self-sacrificing artifact in play, sacrifice the artifact. Then, tap Emry to be able to cast it from the graveyard for 0. This triggers the untapper, untapping Emry. Notice that now you're back to where you started. Although not a self-sacrificing artifact, this combo still works with Mox Diamond. When you do this with Mox Diamond, simply don't discard a land card from your hand when you cast it. Then it returns to the graveyard instead of entering the battlefield. This will still trigger the untapper since it triggers when the spell is cast, not when it enters the battlefield or even resolves. It's important to keep in mind that although Mox Diamond increases your storm count, it never enters the battlefield, so it won't increase your grave storm count. If you perform this combo with an X-costed artifact creature instead, then just pay 0 for X and it gets sacrificed as a state-based action when it enters the battlefield with 0 toughness. When doing this combo with an X-costed artifact creature, you can achieve the same result with Thornbite Staff or Intruder Alarm instead of Mirren Spy and Chakram Retriever. With Thornbite Staff attached to Emry, tap Emry to cast one of those creatures from the graveyard for 0. When it enters the battlefield, it dies, triggering the staff. The staff then untaps Emry, and you're right where you started. If Intruder Alarm is being used instead of Thornbite Staff, then the untap occurs when the creature enters the battlefield instead of dying. These are the main ways to generate infinite loops with Emry in this deck, but are by no means the only ones. They're just the simplest ones. Now, what can we achieve with just these loops? Well, obviously the simplest victory would be with Aetherflux Reservoir. Any of the artifacts you're infinitely casting will get you the life needed to shoot opponents down with it. This is the simplest win con in the deck since you'd only need one card in play apart from Emry, a way to untap her, and an artifact to infinitely sacrifice cast. But there are other ways to take advantage of the modular nature of this combo for various win cons. Going back to the first case, let's assume we have Emry, Mirren Spy, and Mishra's Bauble. Performing the previously mentioned loop will have you draw infinite cards during your next upkeep. This also happens with Urza's Bauble. This can be dangerous though because you'd have to wait until your next upkeep to win off of either Laboratory Maniac or Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. This gives opponents plenty of time to try and disrupt your win before you achieve it. You'd have to do this with Leyline of Anticipation at the beginning of the end step before yours. Yet, there are easier ways to win by decking yourself without relying solely on the baubles. With Vidalcan Archmage in play, you draw a card every time you're casting any of these zero-costed artifacts or X-costed artifact creatures. The same thing happens with Secrets of the Dead since you're casting a card from your graveyard. Without interruption, either of these cards win you the game on the spot if you have either Labman or Jace in play. Performing the previously mentioned loop with Lotus Petal will generate infinite colored mana. The same occurs with Lion's Eye Diamond, but remember that you'll be discarding your hand every time you sacrifice it. This infinite mana can then be emptied into Urza Lordheart Artificer in order to cast your entire deck, which would include the aforementioned Labman and Jace, to thus win via decking yourself. Alright, to summarize, let's see how many different configurations this combo has to lead us to victory. Looking at the diagram, you can see that there are 30 different configurations for achieving a 3-card infinite recursion combo with Emry. This makes winning via combo very consistent with this deck, and as I mentioned earlier, this isn't the only way to combo off. You can achieve similar results without the previously mentioned self-sacrificing artifacts, but you'd still need a sacrifice outlet. Krark Clan Ironworks can be used with any zero-costed artifact. However, Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar can only be used if that zero-costed artifact is also a creature. Keep in mind that the X-costed artifact creatures won't work with these sacrifice outlets since they're sacrificed as a state-based action. So you can't sacrifice them to either of these sacrifice outlets when you cast them for X equals 0. So, what can you pitch to Krark Clan Ironworks? Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, Mox Amber, Mox Opal, Memnite, Ornithopter, Phyrexian Walker, Shield Sphere, and even the previously mentioned Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotus Petal, Mishra's Bauble, and Urza's Bauble, since you can still sacrifice them to Krark Clan Ironworks for 2 colorless mana. So, just as before, Mirren Spy or Chakram Retriever can untap Emry for any of these artifacts being cast, while Thornbite Staff or Intruder Alarm can untap Emry for any artifact creature used in the combo. The same win cons as before will also work with these combos. It is worth noting that the byproduct of all these 4-card combos is infinite mana, so you wouldn't need any additional cards for that end result. As before, looking at the diagram, you can see that there are 96 different configurations for achieving a 4-card infinite recursion combo with Emry. This makes winning via combo even more consistent with this deck. You can also pull off a combo similar to the previously mentioned ones with Blasting Station instead of Quark Clan Ironworks, Ashnod's Altar, or Phyrexian Altar. Even though the latter provide infinite mana, the former provides infinite damage, which wins the game on the spot without needing something to sink the mana into. Since this combo revolves around creatures, you can also use either Mirren Spy, Chakram Retriever, Thornbite Staff, or Intruder Alarm. With either card that untaps Emry in play, you can sacrifice any 0-cost artifact creature to Blasting Station. It deals 1 damage to any target. Then, tap Emry to cast that 0-cost artifact creature from the graveyard, triggering any of the 4 cards that will untap Emry. The artifact creature entering the battlefield will trigger Blasting Station, untapping it. You're now back to where you started and can do the combo all over again until you kill off the table. This is a win con similar to Aether Flux Reservoir and any configuration of the 3-card Infinite Recursion combo, in that it takes 4 cards to win the game. Also, this alone provides 16 more possible ways of going infinite with Emry. That means that so far we've discussed 142 different ways of going infinite with Emry, excluding the applicable win cons. Even then, that's not all the possible infinite combos this deck can assemble. What's crazy is that there's just so many combos possible with all the different pieces within the deck. There's so many ways to assemble an infinite engine that the deck doesn't become too linear and thus remains fresh. Let's face it, no one wants to play a stale deck any more than anyone wants to drink a stale brew. The cards also synergize exceedingly well with each other, so even if you're not able to reach infinity yet, you still have plenty of interesting things to do while piloting the deck. Alright, now for the moment you've been waiting for. Turn 1 win with Emry. You need the following God Hand: Aether Flux Reservoir, Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, Mana Vault, Lightning Greaves, and Mirren Spy. Cast Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal, and Mox Opal. Tap Mana Crypt to cast Mana Vault. Tap Mana Vault to cast Lightning Greaves. Use the remaining 2 colorless mana and tap Mox Opal to cast Mirren Spy. Sacrifice Lotus Petal to add the blue needed to cast Emry, which costs 2 less. You now have the Mirren Spy, Lotus Petal, Emry combo online. With the infinitely many times you can cast Lotus Petal from the graveyard, you generate infinite mana to cast Aether Flux Reservoir. Then, continue the combo to gain infinite life with Aether Flux Reservoir in play. You then pay the life necessary to kill off the table. The craziest thing is that isn't even the only turn 1 win. If you have Urza instead of Aether Flux Reservoir, you can use your infinite mana to cast Urza and then sink all your mana into him to win that way as well. Remember also that Emry self-mills 4 cards when she enters the battlefield. So maybe you don't have a win con in your God Hand, but she self-milled Codex Shredder and Stroke of Genius. You can then make everyone draw their entire library, since you can just recur Codex Shredder from the graveyard to recur Stroke of Genius in order to recast it as many times as necessary. Or maybe you self-milled a 0-cost artifact creature and Blasting Station. You can then recur both cards with Emry and the infinite mana from Lotus Petal, and then use the Blasting Station infinite combo to kill off the entire table. It's crazy. Of course, the probabilities for these situations are astronomical. It's far easier to consistently obtain a turn 0 win with Flash Hulk, since your God Hand just needs Flash, Protean Hulk, Ley Line of Anticipation, and 2 sources of free mana, which is only 5 cards instead of 7. However, you can still pull off a turn 1 win in Mono Blue with Emry. And it doesn't even have to be Lotus Petal, you can use Lion's Eye Diamond instead. The rest of the cards in the deck are for support. We shouldn't always expect a turn 0 or turn 1 win, so we need ways to increase the consistency to try and pull it off as quickly as possible. The deck is running Seed of the Synod and Darksteel Citadel as quote-unquote zero-costed mana rocks, since they reduce Emry's mana cost but can also be tapped to pay for it as well. Besides Mana Vault, the deck also runs Soul Ring as cheap and efficient mana. Besides being able to cast our spells, we also need to have them. Therefore, the deck runs tutors to seek out those cards needed in order to increase consistency. Tribute Mage can tutor for Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots in order to not just give Emry haste, but to protect her as well with the Shroud or Hexproof. Trophy Mage can be used to tutor for Ashnod's Altar, Blasting Station, or Phyrexian Altar. And perhaps the best of the three is Trinket Mage, which can be used to tutor for any zero-costed or one-costed mana rock, as well as any of the zero-costed artifact creatures. Another great way to tutor for zero-costed and one-costed artifacts is with Artificer's Intuition. Not only does it tutor for that type of artifact, but you need to discard an artifact to do so, which isn't a problem since Emry can cast them from the graveyard anyways. And all you have to pay is 1 blue mana to activate its ability. You can also tutor for any artifact without restriction by casting Whir of Invention, Reshape, or Fabricate. Reshape requires you to sacrifice an artifact as part of its cost, but again, Emry doesn't care about that. Whir of Invention is amazing here since it has Improvise as well as being an instant. You can also use Inventor's Fair to tutor for any artifact. Additionally, I'm running Mystic Forge in order to pseudo-draw artifacts from the top of my library. Since most of them are so cheap, we can really burn through the deck, and if there's something stuck on tap and you're desperate, you can tap it, pay 1 life, and exile the top card of your library. Or, you can use any of the 5 fetch lands to shuffle the deck while getting an island into play. Since the deck is very dependent on the graveyard, Elixir of Immortality helps reshuffle the graveyard into the deck at instant speed for just 2 mana in response to someone exiling our graveyard. You can also use Academy Ruins and Buried Ruin to save 1 artifact in the graveyard from targeted removal. Also, in order to get as much draw in as possible in a multiplayer game, the deck is running Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora. In order to really protect the deck, the rest of the non-land slots are for counter magic. The deck runs Counterspell, Flusterstorm, Disallow, Force of Negation, Force of Will, Mana Drain, Negate, Pact of Negation, and Swan Song. Additionally, Cyclonic Rift's inclusion is pretty much self-explanatory. Mystical Tutor is added in case we gotta find a Counterspell, Cyclonic Rift, or Whir of Invention. Oh, and in case Emry is stolen, Homeward Path is included in the deck for good measure. And the rest of the deck is pretty much just Ancient Tomb and 24 basic lands. With so many different ways of reaching infinity, it'll be pretty difficult for opponents to disrupt us while assembling the combo pieces. Especially since the main part of each engine is Emry, and she's always available in the command zone. Unless of course she's stolen or turned into a creature without abilities. One thing I'd like to note is that you don't really need all the really expensive cards to build this deck. It just won't be as efficient or consistent. So you could definitely take out all the fetch lands, Lion's Eye Diamond, Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt, Mox Opal, Force of Will, and Mana Drain. You can instead use 5 basic islands, Isochron Scepter, Dramatic Reversal, Shimmer Dragon, Clock of Omens, Deprive, and Familiar's Ruse. Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal make the infamous Dramatic Scepter combo, which can provide infinite mana when combined with the remaining mana rocks. Shimmer Dragon and Clock of Omens give you more things to do with your artifacts in order to compensate for the loss in efficiency. You can draw cards with the dragon while untapping artifacts with the clock. Deprive and Familiar's Ruse are good enough substitutions for Force of Will and Mana Drain, since their mana cost is the same as Counterspell. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Emry, Lurker of the Loch. You don't need to build a cEDH deck around Emry, and you can just as easily build a graveyard artifact recursion deck with Emry at the helm. As far as my own spicy brew, you can find my correct deck list for this commander down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am Demented Kirby, and happy brewing.